daily dose of practical wit and wisdom with a professional educator and trainer, Amazon best-selling author, United States Marine, television and radio host, Paul G. Markel. Each episode will focus on positive and productive ways to strengthen your mindset and help you improve your relationships, career goals, and overall well-being. Please welcome your host, Paul G. Markel.
Hello and welcome back to Morning Mindset. I am your host, Paul Markel, and thank you for joining me for a brand new episode. I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this morning. Now, today we're going to talk about living in a life raft. And you might be thinking to yourself, what does living in a life raft have to do with mindset? Well, stand by because we're going to talk about it. Okay. What is a life raft? I mean, everybody out there who's an adult, and even kids, probably know what a life raft is, right? A life raft is a piece of emergency equipment on a boat or a ship. And when do you use a life raft? Well, you only use a life raft in a crisis or an emergency. You're traveling along on a boat, you're on the Titanic or whatever, and boom, here comes an iceberg. There's a hole in the ship sinks, everybody climbs into a life raft. Or hopefully, unlike the Titanic, hopefully there'll be enough life rafts for everyone, right? But what is a life raft? What is it there for? Is a life raft a travel craft? Is it a vehicle to take you from point A to point B? Well, that's not really what it's designed for. A life raft is simply there to keep you alive until somebody comes along with a real boat to rescue you, right? Or, if, in the case of the Coast Guard, a helicopter to rescue you. But when you're in a life raft, you're not heading on a certain course, right? You're just kind of bobbing along on the waves, taking you, going wherever the current takes you. Now, you might get lucky and get washed up on shore, but most of the time, when people end up in life rafts, they just bob up and down until they happen to get found by a helicopter or another ship or something like that. If you were going to take a cross-Atlantic or a cross-Pacific journey, you wouldn't go down and get a life raft, would you? Well, of course you wouldn't. You wouldn't get a life raft because life rafts don't have motors. They don't have rudders. They don't have steering systems and compasses and navigation equipment and so forth. A life raft is just a basic safety tool. It's a safety net in the water, I guess you could say. And there you are in the life raft, and you're just bobbing up and down on the waves, going with the current wherever the flow takes you, and you're waiting for someone or something to save you. And my question to you today, as you examine your life, are you living in a life raft? Are you living your life as if you were in a life raft? Are you just floating along, waiting for someone to come along to rescue you or to show you the way? Maybe you started out on a journey and, you were in high school or maybe you were in college and you had big plans for your life. And you said, man, I'm going to do this. I'm going to accomplish that. And it could be that, like the Titanic, you ran into an iceberg, right? Something happened in your life, something, a crisis or a roadblock, or like I said, you ran into a big rock and you were on your way to your destination. You were traveling forward and boom, things all came apart and you just started floating along. Maybe in your career, you had big plans, but then you ended up just taking a job just for the time being. You're like, I'll take this job. I'll just do this just for the time being. Well, then it became comfortable and you're existing. I mean, you're not losing anything. Like when you're in a life raft, you're not drowning. You're just kind of floating along, right? So you could, I suppose, be comfortable in a life raft if you stayed in it long enough. Are you living your life as if you were in a life raft? Now, some of you might be thinking, Paul, I wish I had a life raft. I'm in the water with a life jacket on. I'm in one of those orange, big, fat life jackets, and I'm just floating up and down, and I wish I had a life raft. Or maybe you're like Jack in the Titanic, and you're out there, and you feel like you're just clinging to a piece of floating wreckage, and you wish you had a life raft. Where do you want to be? We need to figure out a way to get you up and out of the water We need to figure out a way to get you out of the life raft, back into a boat, back into a ship that has a motor and a rudder and a navigation system so that we can get you going forward. Now, what have we talked about up to this point with our morning mindset? We've talked about, well, just recently, the previous episode, we talked about what weeds or saplings are in your life that are keeping you from growing. Are there weeds in your life that you need to get rid of so that you can, continue to grow? We've talked about honest self-assessment. Have you engaged in honest self-assessment? Have you done a gut check? I don't know. You tell me. Because if you say, well, yeah, Paul, you may be right. I might just kind of be floating along. At one time I had big plans for my life and I was going to accomplish things and I was going to do things. And then I got comfortable and now I'm just floating along. Well, what are you going to do? How are you going to start that motor? How are you going to get that rudder pointed in the right direction? Well, one of the things that we talked about is education and training and experience. Are you worth the investment in education and training? Or are you just making excuses for yourself? You say, that's nice, but I can't. I don't have time. I'm too busy. It costs too much money. Now you're offering yourself excuses, and those aren't reasons. How about voluntary hardship? Are you willing to undergo voluntary discomfort or voluntary hardship? Are you willing to be uncomfortable in order to get out on the other side and achieve something? You might say, all right, Paul, smart guy, maybe I am living in a life raft. So what? So what's your solution? Well, like I said, sometimes you have to make hard choices. Sometimes you have to be a little bit uncomfortable. If you want to achieve things, you may have to risk. So before I let you go, I just want to let you know that I am here for you. Morning Mindset, we are here for you. And as we progress, we're going to be talking more about positive and proactive things that you can do in order to get that motor started, to get yourself a rudder, or maybe you're just going to fashion a sail out of an old sheet or jacket, something to get you going forward so that you're not just floating along, waiting, hoping that something good is going to happen. And sadly, folks, I bet you that there are people in your life who are living in that life raft, and what they're doing is they're just hoping that someone's going to come along and save them, hoping that they're going to get lucky, or hoping that, how many of you know people that play the lottery? They've got all kinds of big dreams for when they win the lottery. If I ever win the lottery, I'm going to derp, whatever, right? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. We like to play these little games with ourselves on social media. How many times have you been on Facebook? And you'll see a post and it says, if you had blank, if you had $100,000, what would you do with it? Or, if you had $1 million, what would you do with it? Or what have you? But that doesn't get us going in the right direction. That's just hope and luck and nonsense. What I want you to do is to think, no, I'm not going to wait around for someone to come rescue me. I'm going to rescue myself. I'm going to pull myself up and I'm going to turn this life raft into a pleasure craft. I'm going to go ahead and start moving toward my goals. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about during the next episode of Morning Mindset. We're going to talk about setting goals and how important that is. I've set goals in my life, and I was actually very, very pleased with myself that I set some goals and I kind of had forgotten about them. And then I went back and I looked at that old notebook from, years and years earlier and read the goals that I had written down for myself when I was a young Marine and realized that I had achieved just about every one of them, even though I hadn't been purposely and deliberately waking up every day thinking I need to achieve that specific goal. So please join me tomorrow or the next episode or whenever it is you're listening to this. You can binge listen if you want. I'll let you. All right, guys, thank you very much for being a part of Morning Mindset. I'm your host, Paul Markel. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for reviewing, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you for spending time with us today. To get show notes, submit a topic request, and for more from your host, Paul G. Markel, visit morningmindsetpodcast.com. That's morningmindsetpodcast.com. Please leave a review for this podcast on your favorite podcast player. We appreciate your time and effort, and we look forward to reading your honest feedback.